Amazing. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another session at Microsoft Zero to Hero, the last session of August. And it's always amazing being on this stage and be able to share content and knowledge with you guys, amazing members that we have in this community. Hamid.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. As usual, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever the world you are. We are so happy to be here again. As Saeid mentioned, last session of the month, another Saturday. Thanks for joining. It feels like home. We are having this session on the stage, and looking forward to this session. And I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, amazing. Before we kick off the session, I want to say thank you, every one of you, every single of members that we have. We reached to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, and it's nothing but amazing to have these amazing members part of Microsoft Zero to Hero, Microsoft Learn communities. And recently, Microsoft MVP blog shared a great story about our community and all of program that we have under this community. And we are so happy that even less than a year we reached to this level, and it's so amazing for us. So thank you so much, everyone.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Yeah. So, Hamid, normally we have some slides regarding Microsoft Learn and what we are doing and so on, and some information about next sessions, but we don't have these slides today. So, we normally talk about Microsoft Learn. Hamid, just some information about Microsoft Learn, and then we can basically start our session.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. We really wanted to have the content within the slide, but yeah, we can just talk about Microsoft Learn, the community, tech communities, learning rooms. Make it your homepage. Microsoft Learn, as usual, we always share. It turned into a hashtag actually now. Like just make it your homepage. Leverage Microsoft Learn contents, updates, free training materials, free exam practices that you can take before going to the actual exam, especially nowadays with applied skills and the differences between the actual certification. And it really helps to prove that you are really specialized with one specific skill rather than like a broad skills within one exam certification code. So with that, within Microsoft Learn, you can leverage also tech communities and learning rooms like Zero to Hero, other tech communities with different technology categories, with your own speciality, and you can get connected within a Teams channel to talk directly to professionals, to learners, students, people all over the world. This is a fantastic opportunity, and we're so happy to be here also together with Microsoft Learn and within the learning rooms.
Yeah, amazing. And it's good to mention that AI Skills Challenge is right the corner. So make sure that you register there. And there are a lot of good challenges that can help you to leverage and skill up your AI skills. So don't miss that one. And it's really great opportunity for everyone that can, upskills their knowledge in AI area. Okay, so let's go through the slides. Before we start the slides and talk about the content today, which is simplify automation and integration with just 4 key steps, I want to mention about some part of our story, why we created this content, why we think that we need to have this session today, live session today. So it was like 2 months ago, if I'm not mistaken, Hamid, we decided to share our around 20 years experience about automation and integration in some format of content inside the presentation. And all of those information and let's say experience that we gained through these years to help you to see how you can start, how you can go through different automation and integration, and you can have a successful service implemented in your environment. So basically, all of information that we are sharing with you today, it's all related to our experience that we gained through these years. And basically, I believe if you learn today about this presentation and this session, you're able to implement any type of automation or integration in your environment, even if it's not full cloud environment. So, I
Absolutely.
mean, if there is no things from you, let's just start for the
Yeah, I'm so excited to just getting started with the slides. Let's go.
yes, exactly. Perfect. So Hamid, tell us about you.
Yeah, of course. So I'm Hamid. I guess through these years we met within the community, in the other communities, having slides, and I'm so happy within in here today in this session, and also in the community, and also having being a member of the Microsoft communities overall, regardless of which community it is. And I'm currently working as a cloud solution architect in IKEA, and I'm Azure MVP and also certified trainer in Microsoft. And currently, together with Saeid, we are leading Zero to Hero and MS Farsi within learning Microsoft Learn learning rooms. And also good to mention, we are also Learn experts within Microsoft Learn.
Amazing. Yeah. So for me, it's a bit shorter because Hamid mentioned about a lot of things. My name is Saeid Dahl, a senior solution architect at Opheads. And also I'm Azure MVP and community lead of Microsoft Zero to Hero and MS Farsi, as well as Microsoft Learn expert. And for you guys, if you want to connect us, you can easily scan these QR codes, and then you can find us in different social medias. So let's just start. For the first step, Hamid and I having a lot of experience about this specific step, and we realize these three items, stakeholders, expectation, and limitations, are three critical items for the first step. So it's important that we go through all of these steps and get enough understanding to be able to create the main goal, main reason of the goal of the automation or integration. So we are going to talk about each one of these items today, and then we, of course, move to the other slides. But for this first step, it's like fundamental of creating an automation and integration. And it's pretty much important. You cannot skip from this step, because as soon as you skip from this step, if you create and implement your automation, you will be back to this step again. So you should avoid any loop of any implementation that you are going to have. So let's start with the first one, which is a stakeholder. So Hamid, let us know about this stakeholder and why it's so important to have it in this step.
Absolutely. It was really good that you mentioned that this is the foundation, the slides and the content and experience. When it comes, especially for automation, integration, having the DevOps culture. So it's really good to like mention as a culture. So how you approach this project, project or anything you would like to do with the within the project. So starting from the foundation, building the culture, and knowing your stakeholders. This is something that always getting mentioned in everywhere. Know your stakeholders. What does it mean, knowing your stakeholder? Know sometimes they're not technical. They have no idea what's going to happen. They just need one specific thing to happen. Is it the automation, integration, the product which is going to be released after the project, after some deadline that is already defined? So having that culture built and will help you to have the power to influence within that project. So building the responsibilities and building responsibilities will help you to have the proper responsibilities within your team. So it means that defining the roles of who is going to do what with what kind of competence. So we will be also talking in the upcoming slides about that part, which is really also important. And I'm also excited to talk more actually on and persist on that one specific item, competence within the team. And it also helps you how you are going to engage your stakeholders, like building continuous connections with them and keeping the connection straightforward, talking about the process, sharing about the culture, sharing about the process. I mean, It's also maybe good to mention here also will be, I really would like to also mention in the upcoming slides. So process automation and business automation is also something different that we need to also keep in mind once building the foundation and also the relationship, building the foundation relation with the stakeholders. So they know this what they want, but how we are going to translate it, it is really important to know, is it the process automation or business automation or the integration we are going to build.
Yeah, exactly. And as we mentioned it here, we talked about a stakeholder shape of they shape the automation strategy, and it's pretty much important, because if you just skip this step and just think, okay, someone asked me for some automation and integration service, or kind of using some technology to build some kind of solution for them, and you don't listen what exactly they need, then you will be failed, because basically, as we mentioned here, stakeholders, they are some kind of part of your solution, that they shape your strategy for your automation. So that's why the stakeholder is pretty much important, and it's important that you identify those people and mention that some part of this, first step is some technical people, some non-technical people, and what exactly you should do. But
Absolutely. I have also one thing to mention with the stakeholders, which, but first of all, I just want to verify, is my internet connection is stable? I
yeah,
saw
it
that
is stable. I don't
it's
have any
okay.
problem.
I saw a little bit of like blurry. The thing also with the stakeholder management in the recent months is we've talked also a little more about, like as mentioned, also building the culture and mindset, because eventually here we will also realize with this session, eventually you will realize there are tons of tools and technologies you can use for integration, and you also know which one is best according to other factors. I'm not going to spoil other slides now. To according to other factors that you know this is the best a solution, this is the best tool according to those factors. However, with what relationship and how translating them. Let's go to expectations.
Yeah, exactly. So for expectation, I have one experience in this regard. So it was like 4 or 5 years ago. I worked for a company that they've asked us to build some kind of automation for a very big process that they would like to remove a lot of manual tasks. And they start to send us some information, plus what they want and what they want to do, or let's say achieve. But the problem was, they didn't know what is the main expectation that they have from this automation. And we ended up with some problem, with some lack of some connection, lack of some performance on the service. And this is why we need to know about the main expectation. You need to identify that. It's pretty much important to make sure that it's aligned with the business goals. Or even if you want to do some improvement in the feature in your service, you have to know what kind of expectation will become in the future. I know it's pretty much hard to understand, or let's say to get some information which is related to the future, but we are IT guys, right? So basically we can build solution based on some kind of expectation that they are coming in the future. For example, just give you an example. I can create an automation, or let's say some kind of integration that works for today business needs for, like, let's say 50 people. But it's not good to just keep, or let's say formatted your automation in this scale. You need to think about future, like 2 years, 3 years, and then you need to build your solution to be able to somehow upscale this solution for the future. So that's why expectation is pretty much important. And you are the person, you are the responsible person to measure that kind of expectation. You need to talk to stakeholders, people that they are responsible, and you need to get some information from them what exactly they need, and which is come to the timeline and budget. So those kind of expectation is some kind of fundamental steps for this specific part. So
Absolutely. It's also like yeah, we can go to next slide. Thank you.
okay.
And it's also like each of these options from stakeholder management, connection, relationship, building the culture, building the foundation, to expectations and the limitations now in this option also. It's also kind of the balance we need to have with each and every step we move forward within our automation and integration within the organization. If we push and put all our energy in one item, we will be realizing in the upcoming months, weeks, months, years that something is collapsing automatically. So your automation turns into a collapsing or collapsed automation actually, or integration that happens automatically. So it's really important to especially with this slide of limitation, to recognizing the limitations in terms of budget and resources. What does it mean? It's resources, not actually a digital or technology resource you deploy within your environment. Resource is your team. A resource is the things that you have in your hand currently, also including the technology itself. Also the budget, which is really important to know what kind of technology or thing you have in your mind, what stakeholder wants, but the budget is here, but the expectations, as Saeid mentioned, are here. There is no match. What should we do? Coming to that, the technical constraints, infrastructure and legal systems, it's also really important to have a great comparison of documentation in your environment, to have the analytics, what we want, again, what we have currently in our environment. If there is a big gap between them, but first you need to upgrade and come to there what you want to achieve with your automation or integration, or integrating a third-party application, plugin, anything in your environment, in organization's ecosystem. And at the end, eventually putting all these dots together is the organization is ready to take these terms of culture and skill sets. Let's say sometimes, but or also in many times, or stakeholder, as mentioned in the previous slides, might not be that much of technical like yourself. Currently, we are in this session, or in your team, or your team itself. However, they just want it, but not caring about how and who and how they are going to use that eventually. That's also part of the culture, as mentioned, that we need to have, and also a skill set of the competence beside the thing that we are going to build by, again, putting all those dots together. Risks, mitigation, alerts, monitoring, this is also part of the process that needs to be also considered. Again, just building and releasing it's not the case, but building and having a long-term plan, also not fixed plan, long-term plan to maintaining it, knowing the risks, monitoring it properly, and having the competence of mitigating them. It's also an important factor in this case. Again, also including the unforeseen challenges that's gonna happen, or might, or most definitely will happen in the future, like how you're going to improve it, how you're going to develop it. If you just release it, okay, you have a plan also to maintain it, but you will then go back to the part of having the legacy systems in the upcoming years by having that one version of automation, one version of integration, but you need to also keep it up to date, modernizing it, making it more modernized, digitalized version. I hope I said the word correctly. And then you will realize that everything is going straightforward.
Yeah, exactly, Hamid. And one example that I recently basically faced related to unforeseen challenge. We had a customer that they've had a kind of automation based on PowerShell, and it was located, or let's say implemented, inside Azure automation. And as you know, Microsoft has done some change to recommended to not use PowerShell 7.1, if I'm not mistaken, and you need to update it to the other version. So this customer said, okay, what should I do now? So basically, this kind of challenges, it's unforeseen. It means some services may be deprecated, or there is some bug that you need to fix it. So the type of the code, the type of the service that you are going to use should be enough flexible to be able to move to another solution. You always need to have this alternative solution and this kind of alternative way to fix this kind of problem. So for this customer, it was easy. Just we needed to change the runbook to next version 7.4, and then we will be able to use the same code for the automation. But it's something like that. It can be easy like this, or it can be some complicated scenario that we need to deal with that. But your code, your solution should be enough flexible to handle this kind of unforeseen challenges.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
That's really good that you mentioned that experience. I guess all of us, we have currently, and absolutely, definitely, we are going to face it because it's evolving. Even now we are talking in this session, it's evolving. So you need to have a plan to get evolve also with that ecosystem in order to prevent to become a legacy system having your environment, or also having a legacy culture in your environment. It's really highly recommended. So that was really good to mention it.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. So until here, we learned that the main goal is dealing with stakeholder, identify them. We need to understand the expectations of they have from the automation or integration service that you are going to use, and you need to know your current and future limitations. Understanding of the feature limitation is pretty much hard, I know that, but as I've mentioned, you always need to have the alternative solution for your scenario. But we understand about this main part, but what is the next step? The next step is analyze the requirements. So there are a lot of requirements. We all know. So it's completely understandable. But we put it into 4 main requirements. And these 4 requirements means you need to understand them, you need to use them, and you need to apply them in your environment based on what exactly you need. So these are infrastructure, cost, tools, and security. 4 most important items for step 2 of your automation or integration implementation. So let's start with the first one, which is infrastructure. For the first part, you need to categorize your automation in 2 main parts. It can be full cloud, or it can be hybrid or connected to on-premise. So when we are talking about hybrid, or let's say full cloud solution, then we need to go through these different scenarios, or we need to understand what exactly we need to do. And it's coming from the first step of a stakeholder, understanding the expectation and knowing about limitation. If you remember, one of the items that we have had in the first slide related to limitation, if we need to deal with legacy applications or service or tools, and then if we need to work with on-premise, then it's a completely different story. So you need to identify if you want to deal with some cloud solution, or some third-party application, or some on-premise services. When we are talking about full cloud scenario, it's pretty much easier than the others, because basically Microsoft providing you a lot of type of services, connection ready, that you can use easily in your environment. Or even for some kind of services, like if you want to create integration between Entra ID or some HR system, Microsoft already provided some built-in service that you can easily create some sync, right? But when it comes to some services that needs to be connected to the third-party applications, or even on-premise, then you need to identify them. Otherwise, you are not able to create a reliable automation, and it's so important. So for this step, you need to identify that. You need to know if you are going to use some on-premise scenario, then what you need exactly, what kind of services, what kind of data, how you want to store them, how you want to gather the information, how you want to create the integration between your on-premise services and your cloud services. And it's pretty much important. Otherwise, you cannot create a reliable automation or integration, and you ended up with some costly service, or even you ended up with some low performance service. So you need to identify them. On the other hand, if you are going to have some full cloud scenario based on some third-party application or other services, then it's a different story. You can use some Microsoft best practices or some kind of scenarios that you can easily build based on your Azure or some kind of, for example, Power Platform services. So you need to understand that one. But what the next? Security. Hamid?
Security, yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is also a factor of moving in parallel with the plan of, regardless of infra tools cost, but security also is one of the bold ones that we always need to check with whatever step we move forward. So check for the security benchmarks from Microsoft, say check for best practices. I've recently got really learned it as an experience that it's simple to build. We can just go to portal or integrate or build the automation. It's simple, but as much as simple it is, then it will become much complicated to manage in a close future. Even you build it simply now, it's okay, it's working. You can provide it to your clients, to your customers. However, we must make it complicated. If you are not making it complicated, it also doesn't matter, doesn't mean it's not secure. It is secure, but as much as you make complicated, document it for yourself, use the best practices, use the top words security protocols within your environment, and merge with the benchmarks from Microsoft. Recently, I also got to know about not sure we can use it in also many cases about CNAPP, a cloud native application protection platform. So go and study those ones. So they're kind of a platform and from the top level hierarchy that you can use to get to know other security benchmarks from it, and it really helps you to stay up to date with the automation. Again, if it's simple to build, there is something that we need to consider. So a light bulb should be enlightened even in our mind that, okay, that is much simple. So there must be something that we must make it complicated in order to prevent any kind of the upcoming risks in the future.
Exactly. And I believe this security part, it's something that is really connected to the expectation of stakeholder or some people that requested for this automation. Why? Because everyone knows. So security, it has direct connection with cost. So if you want to have better security, then your cost goes up. It's very obvious. So if you are going to create some automation or integration that you need to do some process with confidential data, then having a full security connected to your services or your scenario, it will have more cost to your environment. So you need to somehow give this understanding, or let's say give this information to people that they are requested for this automation scenario. So security is pretty much important. And in some cases, you just need to understand you have some built-in solution. So those built-in solutions will help you a lot to have a good security for your environment. But as I mentioned it before, it's pretty much important if you are going to have like high confidential data for your automation, or it's nothing with some kind of confidential data. Then you can build your security based on what exactly you need for your service. So next part, cost. Pretty much important, I mean, right? Dealing with CFO.
Yeah, you also mentioned that as much as you require more security, your cost also increases. So this part is also, all of these 4 items here are really important to move in parallel with any project or with any automation idea moving forward.
Yeah, exactly. So when it comes to the cost part, it's pretty much important. So we use the first step. We understand what exactly we need to implement, or at least we got enough information to go through the next step. And the next step is cost. So you, as a solution architect or an automation expert, you need to create a table of cost, and you need to understand what what level of cost you are going to face. For example, in terms of service, in terms of usage, and all of costs that you have in your environment. And in some cases, let's say in many cases, maybe it's not only Azure services, it's not only Azure service consumption. Maybe you have other costs. Maybe you have hidden costs. You have to identify them. It's pretty much important that you understand them. So this cost is related to creating a table of information that you need to know what is going to have for the cost part. And it's pretty much important. Otherwise, as I've mentioned, you are going to have a kind of fight with your lovely CFO in your environment. So it's important. And how you can somehow calculate this kind of cost. So it depends, as I've mentioned, if you are going to have full cloud solution or if you are going to use some hybrid infrastructure connection and so on. Then, for example, you can use Azure Calculator if you are using Azure services. And in the other hand, if you are using third-party application licenses that you may need for your automation or integration, maybe you have question, okay, what is related to the licenses?
Mm-hmm.
So in some cases, maybe you need to use some services from Power Platform services. So like Power Automate, maybe some resources from the other part. So you need license. You need, for example, license if, let's say, if you want to create some automation connected to some email services, you may need Exchange license service. So you need to know what exactly you need. So as soon as you create this table of cost, it means you pass this part and you can easily understand what the cost of your service, or let's say estimate the cost of service. And it can be roughly estimate, okay? It doesn't need to be exact number of monthly cost, but it can be rough estimate of the cost. So make sure that you have that table as well. Next part, tools.
For tools. Yeah, there
Yeah,
are
that's the interesting part.
thousands of billions of tools we can use. However, keeping in mind those factors, especially cost, as Saeid mentioned, the budget limitations from previous slides, competence of those tools that you are going to decide for your automation, integration, any integration automation solution or project, security perspective of it, and if your infrastructure is ready for that. So I'm really saying that those four factors here are so much connected to each other. And if we keep all of them together in a project moving forward in parallel, discussing with the stakeholders, discussing with team, and being a good translator of a stakeholder and technical part, I'm sure there will be, let's say not 100%, but more than 90% that we are successful within because maybe security is not always 100%, or we are not always going to achieve 100%, but we can achieve the most of it, making most of it in our project, in our automation, in our integration. We can make sure that we are ahead and we are in line with the evolve of the technology, modern technology. Coming to the tools, as mentioned, there are thousands you can decide to use according to those factors that you have. So if you're planning for design that in your environment, you might know you have Visio, you have Draw.io, you have Miro boards to connect the dots together, just to get to know your environment, your plan, and presenting it to your team and to your stakeholders. Again, if there is a competence of using it, or if it's aligned with our budget. Sometimes some licenses from those products can be overwhelming and more than our budget that we specifically assigned to tools. Now, in explaining those factors, we have a budget that we divided in 4 factors here: cost, tools, infra, security. And we need to keep the balance for all of them, and sometimes maybe investing more on security part in order to securing all of the other options we have it in our environment. For documentation, again, we need to keep in mind of having proper solutions for code repositories, for platform. Again, regardless of the platform, what we are talking or trying to share specifically also in this session, we also talked with Saeid prior to the session itself. It's like kind of the culture of the environment. I'm mainly repeating it this as a culture because it is, I personally I think it is part of the culture we need to build of how to moving forward or how to having the proper foundation for it. So again, regardless of the repository, again, if you are choosing a repository, let's say in this case, GitHub, again, we must have those list of the questions like most importantly, cost, competence, how we are going to secure that environment, identity, access management, governance, and these all are factors that will come from your security part that we specifically mentioned here again in this slide. And again, you can use different ones simultaneously. You can use repo in one, you can use boards from different tools, you can use other diagrams to connect dots together, Miro, Visio, any other tools. However, keeping all those factors in mind of competence, cost, security, access management is the most important one that we need to keep in mind once deciding for any kind of tools.
Exactly. Hamid, I think you have the same experience that I already have. So when it comes to the documentation, so you as a solution architect, you as an automation expert, please do not skip this part, because I've been in a lot of situation that I, for example, needed to deal with some solution that have been implemented before by someone, and there is no any document for that, and it's a very big problem. And I think I'm not talking about how much this person is professional to create document and so on, but we are talking about technical side and repetition part. So as a professional person, you need to create a good document for your solution. And the main reason for that is next year, next 6 months, next 3 months, you need to back to that solution. We'll explain it in following slides and why it's important. Because if you back to your solution, and if it's a kind of complex solution, I bet you cannot understand. Even if you created that, you cannot understand what you have done. You need to spend some hours to understand. Hamid just mentioned to see the dots it's connected to each other and how you can compile the solution again. So make sure that you use tools like Microsoft Document, Microsoft Word, to create a good documentation for your solution. Otherwise, you cannot understand. Even as a person who has created the solution, you cannot understand what you have done, or at least it takes time to find a specific issue inside your automation if you face any problem.
Absolutely. I have 2 examples for that part. However, it's good to mention maybe here, like before moving forward with each of one of these 4 factors here, as mentioned in previous slides, it's really good to not to put all your effort and energy in one part, but rather move forward in parallel with all of them and make sure that you make the most of this and achieve the most of the things in the market with the best practices. But an example of the documentation, first, I will like maybe shifting back to 5-6 years ago. It's like when you work and when once you're doing the most of the coding part by yourself within a team, or the most of the configuration, implementation, connecting dots together technically. However, those solutions are provided by someone that you start to build. However, as the years moving forward, but however, on that time I remember that I hated doing documentation by myself or transferring all the things that I'm doing simultaneously to the document. But as the years passing, that you are now providing solution by yourself, you realize that it is really important. And then nowadays, it's now most of the time, now I realize that I'm doing documentation because it's part of the culture of the environment. It makes your team and stakeholders to get to know that competence, become a competence with that tool, automation, a product that you build. Another example, yesterday, for instance, I was in dentist, and then they started to using a scanner device. Then you realize that their software within that machine got software update, a version upgrade. And then the dentist wasn't able to continue using it. There was no documentation on that upgrade, on how to use it. Then I just suddenly realized how important that is actually to have documentation, like also externally to your users, like publicly and also privately within the team. The people go and come within the team. Users are always changing, clients are always changing. It's always really important to have the initial documentation and continuously keep it up to date, as Saeid also mentioned.
What a great two examples that you shared with us, Hamid. And also, I have one experience, or let's say it's a life experience, technical life experience. So I have my repo, I have my private repo, and I stored all of these years experience on that repo. So I have some PowerShell code for 18 years ago. And it's important, it's your knowledge also. So you need to have those knowledge with you as well. If you documented well, then you can understand what you have done. Maybe you ask, okay, it's for 18 years ago, why we should store it? But to be honest, I've had some cases that I needed to back to that 18 years ago to use a simple solution that I've created 18 years ago for today's solution. So this documentation, it's not only for explaining the solution that you have created, but also it's going to store for your feature as well. So you can use that one instead of thinking how I built that one on that day. So you can easily back to your document, just get it, and back to your new solution as well. So don't skip that one. I'm talking directly to the camera. Don't skip that one, please.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's great.
Okay, so let's go for the interesting part and most confusing part. Which service we should use? So Hamid and I having a lot of experience and a lot of feedback questions from people. Which service should I use if I want to use Azure? So we are Microsoft lover. We are providing the solution based on Azure. And this solution that we are these services that we are going to demonstrate and explain it to you today, it's all about Microsoft and Azure. And of course, you can follow some solution based on your on-premises or internal services. There are a bunch of third-party applications or services that you can use for different automations and integration in your environment. However, when we are talking about Azure services, it means we are going to use the service that is best for our scenario, and also it's easy to maintain. So that's why we put 4 services here for you, which we basically used for many type of integration and automation scenarios or a solution that we have implemented from past since now. And we are going to explain it to you. But it's not something that we are going to go and explain deep technical side of that, but it's all about experience and all about the knowledge that we gained through these years, and we are going to share it with you. So Hamid, let's start with the first one. I think this one is the favorite one of both of us. So let's talk about function apps, Azure Functions.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Azure Functions, I mean, you might have heard of the service or not. And as Saeid also mentioned, not also trying to get deep technically of showing how to put in your code, making microservices and configuring. However, like as a short introduction for this service, I might call it lightweight in the category of compute services that you can use for your automation and integration within your environment. So as a lightweight computing serverless and also event-driven service or resource that you can have in your environment. It helped me a lot, and I'm sure for Saeid also, for a lot of people in the world, and currently for you in this session. It helps you to automate your event driven solutions. I mean, as also you see that the world and most of the companies, organizations are moving to getting modernized. However, getting modernized with microservices. So having microservices, a successful service like Azure Functions in your environment helps you to have that you can put those microservices in anywhere that you would like, or having a bunch of microservices that can deliver. Let me translate like that. Having bunch of Azure functions in your environment delivers you a functionality. Maybe with that sentence, I also understand it better now. So you are trying to achieve a functionality. That functionality is the automation that tries to give you a functionality in your environment, or is the integration that you want to integrate in your environment to achieve that functionality. Move to serverless, move to managed services as much as you can. That helps a lot with your cost, with easy management, security, because managed serverless, anything you call it. With that said, making each of your services as functions helps you to have those options also mentioned here. You have the option to have different kind of triggers in your environment. Scheduling it, getting it scheduled, getting triggered on a scheduled basis, having HTTP triggers, blob storage, event hubs, queue storage, service bus, which integrates with those resources within your Azure environment as well. It supports a bunch of most used language nowadays within Word, from Python, C#, Java, PowerShell, and you call it. Scaling helps you to have your app service plan in your environment, and making sure that you have the physical resource in the backend of Azure, and you can also have your scaling plan in place for your Azure functions, and you don't need to worry about scaling at all. As much as your request of increases, it's also elastic, it's also flexible with your requests, and you just get to pay for what you use also with Azure functions. However, also with the factors and the options we mentioned in previous slides, don't mention also to have them underlying of the service you are going to choose. We are going to now mention several other resources and services that you can use for automation, integration, process automation, whatever reason you are going to use. Don't forget cost, don't forget security, don't forget competence, team, documentation. All of them underlying of these services. I feel like we are going step by step in a stair. As much as we move forward, we try to build the foundation, and now we have the resources. Coming to the hybrid connection, it's also flexible with with integrating your VNet and integrating it with your on-prem, with built-in security, and I call it a great service to use as a serverless event-driven computing service to get the functionality you want to achieve.
Yeah, amazing. A very great explanation on Azure Functions. One thing that I would like to add here, because as you know, Hamid, I've been working with a hybrid environment connected to hybrid cloud, hybrid solution a lot. And one of the interesting service that I always using for this kind of scenarios is Azure Arc. So why I mentioned this one? So I had a customer that they said, we would like to use Azure Functions, but we don't want to use Azure backend as the place of storing data and using the Azure backend services. So
That is
what
a
we
great experience. I'm so
Yes.
excited to hear that. Go on.
Yeah. So it was a great experience. So what we have done, the Azure function has this option that you can use Azure Arc together with Azure Arc and bring the power of Azure function in the backend of the customer. So it means you do not need to use backend of Microsoft, but you can use backend of customer connected to the Kubernetes cluster. I know it's pretty much complex in terms of technical side, but it's pretty much understandable if you think it a bit about this solution. So you can use Kubernetes connected to Azure Arc, and then Azure Arc connected to Azure. And then you can leverage Azure functions inside customers environment, and you just need to manage it inside Azure, and it's amazing. So basically you are going to store the data or keep the data and traffic flow inside the customer environment, inside the isolated environment for the customer, but still you can use Azure function. So you can imagine how you can build a very secure solution based on Azure functions inside customers environment. So it's pretty much great solution that you can use to your environment. So just wanted to mention about this great opportunity. And also for Azure Relay, as Hamid mentioned, you can use VNet, you can basically use Azure Gateway, and then, for example, run the code inside Azure function, get information from SQL database, which is located inside the on-premise side, and then you are able to build a great automation connected to your on-premise data. And that's the point that we mentioned. It's really important you know if you are going to have a hybrid solution or it's a full cloud solution. So you need to identify that because of this kind of scenario that you are going to have. Perfect. Azure
Okay.
Functions, the beautiful one. But we still have other beautiful things here as well. One of my favorite service as well. So Azure Automation. What do you think about Azure Automation, Hamid?
Yeah, I mean, all of these services I love it, part of the process automation, business automation. However, I see also a question like some in the chat, and by the way, we will be answering all the questions in the chat. And I'm not sure, Saeid, if you're providing exam voucher for the best question again in the session.
Of course, we provide.
Sorry.
Of course, we
Yeah,
provide.
Okay, perfect. So ask your questions. Anyone in the session currently, we will choose the best question and we will provide an exam voucher. However, going back to the session, I really love all of these services as part of the automation, process automation and the business automation. And we explain a little bit about the differences, and we will also realize. Coming to Azure automation, if you have a kind of an automation, it is a process automation. Consider Azure automation. I mean, it sounds like a nice definition. An automation, then consider it as a process automation. And it also has the functionality and the features of Azure function, like how it gets triggered, the support for different language, the scaling to different resources and environments. Cost is almost free, like 500 minutes. I didn't know about this factor. 500 minutes per month is free. It is almost free then. I mean, or in some cases that you really need to run it like 724 hours, then it might have a little bit of cost, increased cost for you. And the security also in place. I really believe in the security of these systems, but you also need to consider the security of building on top of those resources for the automation you build. With kind of the automation like Azure automation, again as mentioned, you have the possibility of the process automation with PowerShell, Python, having your workflows and workbooks in your environment, and putting all those small process automations and getting triggered with everyone and step and level of your whole automation. Again, we use functions to have the overall of achieving the functionality. We use Azure automation kind of services to achieve the process automation of that, also within the ecosystem of that automation or integration we are using. So you just trigger a small part of your script to achieve something small for you. Audit something for inventory management, for change tracking, and so on. I believe like there is no limit of that. You can script nothing. You can script in, let's call also not everything, but you can script majority of some stuff in your environment, and with Azure automation you can achieve it.
Exactly. One of my friends around several months ago asked me, okay, should I use Azure automation or should I use Azure functions? So to answer this question, One of the best usage of Azure automation is, as Hamid mentioned, it's IT process. So if you are going to build some IT process, internal IT process, you can use Azure automation. However, you need to be smart. And why? Because the experience that I have, as I've said, all of this content we have created are the base of all of experience that we gained during these long years. I would say like 18 years. So what was the problem? This customer, this friend of mine, he said we faced issue with cost. And as you can see here, we mentioned about 500 minutes free per month for IT process, let's say code process or running the code. But it's the big problem that they faced regarding the cost. Why? Because they had a kind of automation that it has run every day, every, like 724. And it costs a lot because you have to be smart of choosing this service. When it comes to the long run code, or let's say non-stop running code, you need to choose other services because Azure automation is for IT service. For example, you schedule it, run it, and finish. Or if you have like webhooks, send a request based on HTTP request, it's run and then done. But when we are talking about the scaling part, we have two main separated part in scaling for Azure automation that you need to know about that. The first part is I call it Azure Sandbox. So what is the Azure Sandbox? It means you are going to use Azure backend to run the code. So what is the problem with that one? If you have a code that is going to be run like, I don't know, like 1 minute, 2 minutes, it's good, no problem, because you're going to use Azure backend, shouldn't be any problem. But there is a fair usage for Azure Sandbox. If you have long run code, then you will be faced problem. You cannot use that. Okay, Saeid, what is the solution here? The other solution that you have here is automation agent. And for automation agent, you have two options. If you are going to have like full cloud solution, then basically you can have one VM inside Azure and use automation agent connected to Azure automation. And when you run the code, it's going to run the code inside that particular VM, which is really great. However, if you have some solution that it needs to be run inside one on-premise service inside your data center, then you can leverage Azure Arc with hybrid runbook and connect it to Azure, and then use automation agent to be able to run the code from Azure automation, which is inside the cloud, and then run it inside your on-premise environment or data center. So that's why you need to know what exactly you are going to do. And it backs again to that first two steps that we already mentioned. So let's jump to another one. Logic apps. So it's, I think I have to say this, I have to name it heaven of the, low code, no code. And the reason is, yeah, it's low code, no code. So you do not need to worry about the, the coding part. However, we have the trigger part. So when we are talking about trigger and event driven, Logic Apps gives you a lot of option. And it's not only HTTP. You can have it for schedule based on time, based on date, based on connected to some email. For example, if you receive an email, trigger, or based on message. So you can connect it to many basically services that can help you to trigger your automation. And based on language, it's low code, no code. It's just drag and drop. You can easily create a new action, put it inside your automation, and then you can easily scale it up. And maybe you think, okay, it's Logic Apps like Power Automate. Kinda, yes. But in the other part, it's pretty much important to understand the Logic Apps. It's pretty much, complex, or let's say more flexibility. You have more flexibility in terms of this kind of service. But One of things that I would like to mention when we are talking about logic apps, basically logic apps help you to build complex solution. And when we are talking about complex solution, it means you can have dedicated server for your logic apps, or you can use Azure Arc to bring power of logic apps, like as you had with Azure Functions inside your on-premise, which is connected to Azure Arc. And it's great. Imagine that you can use logic apps inside your data center, and it's pretty much good solution for those that they want to isolate their environment inside their data centers. In terms of connectors, so when we are talking about connectors, what is the connectors actually? So when it comes to integration, imagine that you want to connect your automation to a specific service, third-party application. Then you need to create a connector between your service or automation and then that third-party application. So when it comes to the coding part, sometimes it's pretty much complex and sometimes it's pretty much easy, to be honest. But it depends what kind of connector, what kind of connection that third party application or service does support. So it's important that we know what kind of connection we can build. But when it comes to the logic apps, in logic apps, you have connectors, pre-built connectors, and it's over 400 pre-built connection. And it basically, when I've checked it, I've seen a lot of type of connection that I can have with different services. For example, in this slide we mentioned even in M365, Azure services, Salesforce, SAP, and others, even for some kind of on-premise data connection. And the good things about logic app is basically you can build custom connector as well. So if you have some specific application, third-party application that you need to create connection, but there is no any built-in connection inside logic apps, logic apps gives you this option to build that custom connectors. And then in the other hand, you also have the HTTP connection. If you need to create some trigger, or if you need to send some kind of data or payload to your automation, you are able to add it with some HTTP request action inside your logic apps. And when it comes to the security, so you have built-in security based on connection, based on data, how you can secure your content, how you can secure for example, secure stores, secure data. You can easily build it based on connection with Key Vault, which you can store your data. So you have bunch of flexibility for this service. So logic apps, it's a great solution that you don't have that much time. You know, time is gold. So if you don't have that much time to learn some specific language, or find someone with a specific skills with a specific language, then you can build it based on logic apps. And it's pretty much easy to understand to create some part of automation. So Hamid, do you have something to add in this slide?
Well, it was a well explained thing. So I guess that the things, several things I had in mind, you just cleared out. It was great.
Amazing, amazing. Perfect. Let's jump to next slide. API management. So why we added this one here? Is it automation service? Nope. It's not an automation service. But Azure API management, it's great if you want to build some integration between other services. So simple terms of understanding of API management. Imagine that you have built a lot of API, or if you have some applications that inside your on-premise side, or even in the other cloud or service software as a service applications that they support some API. So if you want to create some automation, then you need to connect to several API. It's not a good idea to build a lot of connection with different API to be able to get some information. So API management, it's like a port, it's like a portal to front of all of your API that you have. So you can you can have one API, and then you can connect it to other API that you already have to your environment. So it's pretty much easy to create a kind of centralized environment for all of your API. Doesn't matter if it's external or internal. And it's based on policy driven, which is amazing, which is great, because yeah, it's another experience that I've had before. So there was an automation that needs to be connected to, if I'm not mistaken, 4 different API, gathering information, and then be able to do some process inside that with that data, and then store it somewhere based on the content or information that gathering. But there was a problem. So for each API, I needed to create a specific connection, or let's say a header for each API call, because they support different type of security for their APIs, because yeah, there were a lot of third-party application. However, instead of building different API connection to my automation, I've created one API management. I've connected those API to my API management. And as you can see, it's easy to transform the header, the data based on the policy that you define. And then I was able to create one connection from my automation to the Azure API management to get those information that I'm looking for. So it's pretty much easy to centralize everything and go through policy driven. You have developer portal. So just a simple example is, instead of having a complex way to get some information or create some place for developers to understand the environment, or let's say discover it, or for testing, so Azure API management provide you this solution to have developer portal and gives flexibility to developers. And then you have multi-cloud option. When we are talking about multi-cloud option, it means you can easily connect your API management to your Azure API management to your API in on-premise environment, or even other clouds, which is pretty much great. And sometimes maybe you need to make a flexible solution for your API call, so it does support multi-regional scenario as well. And then we have the security. When we are talking about security, it means you have this option to connect it with bunch of protocols of connection, OAuth2, OpenID. You can even do IP filtering. You can rate limiting. So basically, you can build one API with bunch of connection limitation, and then connect it to some automation to make sure that you have a direct connection between your automation and API management. So you do not need to create a lot of customized customized connection. Instead of that, you can use API management with a lot of flexibility. And then if something change, you just need to change only API management. You do not need to do big changes inside your Azure automation. So API management, it's great when you want to use for integration. So Hamid, do you have anything to add here?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this service that you can consider in the cases, as Saeid greatly explained about the features of API management within Azure. It is good for your integration solutions. However, you can consider for automations in the scenarios. However, because as also Said mentioned, it's really good to centralize everything, centralize your APIs. However, you can also centralize your APIs within API management and trigger them with other microservices and build your automation systems upon. So that also can be a solution of if you want to use for automation. But if it's just for automation, I would recommend no. But if it's part of your integration that you want to automate something around it, then you go on, because then you already have APIs centralized with the other APIs that you want to build within microservices, also integrate within your Azure API management, and then trigger them with other microservices such as functions, workflows and other services we've mentioned, or the services that are integrable or best practice to use around Azure API Manager.
Exactly,
I
exactly.
guess we are a little bit of overtime, but we can a little bit speed up with this
Yeah,
slide.
yeah. I think
Yeah,
we are almost done. So we have only one last step. But before we go for that, we just need to mention that all of these services that we provided you as some best practices or lesser services that you can use for automation and integration with your environment that support CI/CD. It means if you want to use CI/CD, you are able to connect it to all of these services. So you can imagine how much is flexible to use that for different scenario, for example, DevOps connected to source code and so on. And it's working great. I've tested several times for all of these services.
absolutely. I mean, all those services helps you within the process of CI/CD. You build your pipelines and you leverage all those resources together, and you have a great product, a great release at the end of that. And you also have the ability of auditing, monitoring, security, all those functionalities and features, each of with each of those services that we've mentioned within the slides. And you have continuous integration from developer side and continuous deployment from your business side, and you have the newer versions of your product release with those beautiful services from Microsoft.
Exactly. So, Hamid, yeah, we explained everything here, but maybe people ask, okay, thank you so much, but which one should I select?
Yeah,
We have some services that we are going to have, but basically, which automation we are going to use. So, we gathered 10 questions, guys. If you ask these test 10 questions, I promise you, you can get a good answer which service you are going to use. And one thing that I need to mention here, in some scenarios, maybe some complex scenarios, you need to combine these services together. As Hamid mentioned, maybe you need to use API management together with, for example, function apps. Or if you are going to have logic apps with, for example, email event driven, but you need to even use Azure or connected to Azure automation, then yes, combination of these services will help you to build a solid automation. But these 10 questions, let's start with this question, just give you some idea how you can use this question. Is the automation event driven? Yes or no? Do I need to run this automation triggered with some email, with some connection, with some request, for example, in service bus?
some
Yes or no?
SMS, email, notification, anything you can trigger
Yeah,
it. You
yeah,
call it.
exactly. Exactly. For example, in this case, if I want to trigger it with email, let's go with logic apps. Easy. Do I need to go through low code, no code? Yes or no? Yeah. If you are going to use low code, no code, then logic apps again. Is the primary goal to automate IT tasks? We already mentioned that. If it's IT tasks, go with Azure automation.
Yeah.
And yeah, exactly. Does your team have a strong development skills? What do you think, Hamid? If we don't have that, logic apps, right?
Yeah, go for functions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go for functions. Yeah, exactly. And do you require integration with multi SaaS applications? Yes or no? And if yes, do you have this possibility to create some customized connection? Then you can answer it. For example, is the scalability a key requirement? Yes. Function app.
Yeah.
Do you need to automate workflow based on conditions? Then it depends what kind of conditions you are going to have. Then if yes, some kind of automation we can use. Monitoring diagnostic critical is the part of the automation. The good things about this question is it depends. If you are going to have detailed information gathering for the, for example, diagnostic, then I can suggest function app because it gives you a lot of information. Otherwise, other services will help you. And do you need integration with on-premise systems? So you need to answer them. And is it cost efficiency a priority? The most important part. So you can decide which services is good to go. So
Absolutely.
basically, yeah, these questions, if you answer, I can promise that you can understand which service is best for your solution. So let's
Absolutely.
go
I mean,
for yeah.
in most of the cases of being in a dilemma of deciding which path, which resource, which solution should I continue follow, I mean, it's really good to have these questions and also the factors and the questions from previous slides. Budget, tools, security, infra, what we have, what we need. Is it event driven? As I mentioned, no code, low code. What are the key requirements for scalability? Is it the key requirement? Cost. Then you already have the things. I mean, it is a good problem to have, which we have within Azure, is there are a lot of services which overlap with each other, and it sometimes makes the decision hard for architects or engineers to decide which service to continue, because you sometimes see those exact several services does the same thing for you for the goal you have, for the goal your stakeholders have, but you need to go deeper with more specific questions than in order to zoom in more and more just to realize which specific service exactly can match with your goals. All of them are already matching with your goals, but one is not a match with your budget, one is not match with your infrastructure, one is not match with your current security implementations, and eventually you have the answer.
Exactly. So the last step, keep monitoring updates. Why it's important. So when you build a solution, when you want to continue with that solution, then you need to monitor and update the service. So we mentioned about some items here related to monitor and updates. So we go through them one by one since we don't have that much time. So we're going fast, and then we can jump to the questions that came to the comments. So I will start with the first one, performance optimization. You need to identify the bottlenecks. You need to check the resource utilizations. For example, if you have some workflow, if you have some automation, if you have some coding that maybe created some issue with your code, and you need to remove them. You need to somehow identify them. Maybe you need to optimize, update, change your code. So you need to identify them. And when it comes to the utilization, maybe the code that you have needs to be updated. I just give you an example. So when you use Azure Automation, if you use Azure Automation Sandbox, and if your code is not enough optimized, you will get loop connection. And it means every time your code will go through a loop, and then you face the Azure Sandbox fail, and then you will be failed on your automation. So you need to optimize your code. You need to remove a lot of loop in your automation to save some times. For another example, if you use the basic tier of Azure function, which is, for example, between 5 to 10 minutes limitation of running the code, then you must know the code is running in the time that is not ended with the function. For example, you need to make sure that your code is running in a best way in less time that you already calculated. So you need to optimize your code. So next part, Hamid, error detection.
Absolutely. Besides that, for performance optimization, identifying bottlenecks, resource utilization. I saw also questions, a question that exactly related to one of them, that about loops that you get within your automation, which causes, as Saeid mentioned, the things that causes it. But beside that, also you get also an increased cost with that loop, that it loops, and then eventually at the end of the day, week, months, if you don't monitor, if you don't check, if you don't have the baseline, that's also really recommended to have at least Azure's baseline alerts within your environment. So with this slide specifically, like for detecting the errors and troubleshooting steps, it's really recommended to have the centralized logging, auditing of your resources, regardless of the automation, what kind of automation and integration. But we are here talking about the resources and the whole solution you have in your environment. Monitoring, auditing, logging, and keeping an eye on those monitorings is important. However, we cannot go through billions of logs and monitorings every day or every second. For that reason, we need to have a good practice, a good baseline of alerts, and configuring them effectively in order to prevent the future errors or future problems. We need to also foresee that what can happen, what is the cause. Also, not to monitor each and every detail. This is sometimes some organizations have bigger budget, bigger environment. They want to have everything. However, when it comes to monitoring or seeing, maybe they are not using more than 50% of the logs that they collect. So just eliminate anything that you don't want to see. What are the most important ones? Just keep an eye on them. By how to keep an eye on them is by setting alerts, getting triggered, also set an automation for them. Use Azure functions, use Azure automations to get alerted, to get emails, to get SMS, to get calls, with also integrating different tools if you have the competence and also budget in your environment. This part, monitoring, logging, auditing, is also one of the best practice and also a thing to must-have things within your environment.
Exactly. So for compliance and security, as Hamid mentioned, we need to go through the logs. We should collect all of them, but it's also related to audits and also security monitoring. So you need to understand the automation that you have created or even the integration that you built. Basically, it's following all of compliance and security that you have been defined with the first steps, which is related to talking about services with stakeholders, responsible people, and so on. And also for the second part, which you had regarding the analyzing the requirements. So basically, you need to always know that your automation, your solution that you have built in your organization is still following compliance and security. And in some cases, maybe your company update the compliance and security based on some new updates. And then you need to do the regular updates and monitoring to be able to understand if the solution is still following the compliance and security role inside your organization.
Absolutely. Coming to adaptation to changing requirements. Change always happens. Even now we are talking, then maybe after 5 minutes you open Azure portal, you see something changed. It happens every time we open. And last time I just realized about functions. Oh my God, there's something changed. How do we need to adapt? That doesn't just happen with your Azure portal. In this case, it's just an example. Or within your organization also, it evolves, it changes, new technologies, new versions, upgrades, and so on. So we need to be flexible and dynamic. If you fix our mind that, as also mentioned previously in the slides, if we fix the culture and mind and we lock it, we are going to have problem with the user, with the stakeholder, with whole market. Actually, it will make the automation and integration harder with other products in the future. You need to increase the security in the future with the current solution. Then you need to adapt. You need to also go in line with the market in parallel. How does that happen? Increasing the competence, increasing the knowledge and experience within the team, and having the proper monitoring on the market with the products you are using also. Like if there is an update, keep an eye on it. If it comes general available, and try to adapt it, try to use in your development environment, and try to increase the competence if it's like in preview stages. Have it in your dev test environment. Try to increase the experience, and eventually merge it. As much as you merge with the market, with the products, with the updates from Microsoft or from any vendor, any tools you are using, you're also increasing the chance of being integrable with future products, increasing security, decreasing cost, having better performance in your environment.
Amazing. So when it comes to the user experience, so maybe your automation that you have created, maybe the integration that you have created, it needs some interaction from user side. So you need to make sure that you have a good automation enable in your environment. So it means you need to get feedback from end user, that they are using your solution. And sometimes maybe the end user is a technical person, and sometimes it can be a non-technical person. So basically you need to make sure everyone that they are using your service basically are happy, let's say. So basically this kind of integration or automation needs to get feedback all the time, feedback from the end user. And then we have system reliability, and means the automation that you created should be always reliable. And it means from maybe 1 to 3 months, first 3 months, your automation it's in pilot. But what if you go for the production? So when you go for the production, you need to understand what exactly is the feedback from the end user. So you need to understand if you are getting a positive or negative feedback from user, and it helps you to basically fix a lot of bugs. And sometimes maybe you need to back to first step, talk to stakeholders, give receive feedback from them, or system owners. You need to receive feedback from them as well, to somehow optimize and improve your service. So you have to make sure that you are following the feedbacks from end users.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, this is really important. Like your improvement from all perspectives, not just security performance, but improvement overall comes from feedback. It's not the feedback just, as Said mentioned, from your own team. It's the feedback we collect. Even vendor companies, product companies eventually come to that. They realized, hey, we need to count on those feedback. So let's have like public portals, and let's evaluate each and every portal. Let's count on end users, on our clients, and so on. And eventually that increases the improvement and comes to a positive outcome.
Yeah. So cost management, Hamid?
Yeah, cost management. It's again, like we talked, like monitoring your usage and identifying the unnecessary uses and unnecessary processes and integration, and it allowing for adjustments that save costs. What that means is that you have a budget. It's a limited budget at certain areas, regardless of the organization or solution or project. If you don't monitor the usage of your budget, on which resources, on which flows, on which products, on which third-party products, even within the team, at the end, we pay for the team within the organization. We pay for the competence, we pay for the knowledge, and we transfer those knowledge into something. We have a digital product at the end, or a physical product at the end. We need to also to monitor each and every of that cost within our environment. Also making sure of that we have budget at a scope, at every scope, with any solution, with any resource, budgeting at, for instance, in this case, let's say within Azure environment, having budget limitations at subscription level, it really helps you to keep an eye of what is going to happen in the upcoming months, upcoming years, or upcoming weeks. And if the threshold, and you can also set alerts, you can monitor if it's 50, 70, 80, 90%, let me know, then I can go and monitor that. So that's really important. As mentioned, use Azure baseline monitoring, best practices and alerts, monitoring environment, absolutely not just security logs, audits, events, but also costs, and set proper alerting also on your cost users and budget users as well.
Exactly. And integration with new services, we already mentioned about that. So if you use a service call like API management, it means you have enough flexibility to connect your API, which is connected to your automation, with a new service. So it gives you a lot of flexibility. However, if you are not going to use API management, Azure API management, then you need to know if somehow, if you want to connect your solution to a new service, then how much it takes, how much you need to update your solution to be able to connect it to a new service, or if you want to change the current ecosystem of your automation. And then you, as we mentioned it a lot, regular updates allow you to automate solution, be seamless, integrated with new tools and platform as they emerge. So basically, it helps you to have flexibility to update and connect it to the new services. In some cases, maybe customer or people inside your organization needs to connect the automation to the new service or extend it with the new service. So your code should be enough flexible, or the service that you are going to use, it should be enough flexible to be able to connect it to the new services. And the last one, Hamid, proactive maintenance.
Exactly. I mean, maintenance and the troubleshooting is not something that we should wait for that to happen, and then say, "Oh my God, now I need to take care of it, and I need to set a process of maintaining that service because it fails, and everything will fail eventually." We need to keep that factor in our documentation. We need to have it written that, or in our mind, that everything will fail if you don't have a proper maintenance solution for that. You need to maintain every service. You need to keep an eye on updates, regular patching, updating, making sure that it's using the best practices and the highly secure protocols within the market in order to prevent failures, system failures, or reducing the risks within the environment. And that comes with regular updates, regular patching, and regular having a process for maintenance. That means, again, by having proper alerting system and monitoring also on your systems.
Yeah, that's true. Exactly. So yeah,
Amazing. We are at the
yeah,
I didn't
one and
realize
a
it.
half. Thank you so much. We had actually around 20 people live with they stayed with us. Thank you so much. And we tried to put everything together. That's why it took like 1.5 hours, because we are talking about a lot of years, many years experience putting inside the presentation. And we hope we help you to get this understanding to how you can start, how you can define your steps, and how you can have a successful automation and integration in your environment. Still, if you want to connect us, use this QR code. So Hamid, let's jump to the questions. We have like several questions, and then
Absolutely.
we
I will
can
show up the first question,
yes, please.
and it's in our screen. So, hi guys, what tools or methods do you suggest for personal and technical teams? I guess teams technical documentation to keep things manageable and searchable when the number of documents becomes really high and complicated. I can maybe answer this question.
Yeah, go for it.
As mentioned, there are hundreds, and I hope, Mahdi, you are in this session, but if you are not in the session, you can watch the recordings afterward. It's about the tools, again, the budget and competence of the team. And that competence also aims at how you and your team are comfortable of using that documentation tools. There are a bunch of really great documentation tools that comes from Atlassian, like Confluence. You call it Saeid. I mean, I just now remember Confluence. You can use other documentation tools, other wikis, but it is
Even
totally
Azure DevOps. Even Azure DevOps.
Azure DevOps. Yeah, you use wikis from different tools, but try not to keep them locally. As much as you
Yeah.
can, just keep them online on a SaaS documentation solution. Keep your design areas, keep your documentations, keep your diagrams in one central place, and properly also design the navigation bar for each scope, each space. Specifically, I'm talking about like Confluence in this case. But again, it's up to the competence. How comfortable are you with different kind of documentation tools and so on? I hope that answers your question. And Mahdi has another question, Said. You can.
Yeah, when dealing with automation and serverless services, some experts always alert about infinitive loop that a technical misconfiguration might cause, leading to functions running repeatedly and incurring high cost in a short period of time. What consideration can help avoid this risk? So I already mentioned about this question. So I've seen it a lot. I've seen it a lot of time. And if we back to the slides, we just mentioned you need repeatedly update, check, and monitor your automation. And it's not only about optimizing your code, but also maybe you need to update your code. Some cases, maybe there was some bug, maybe there was some security issue in terms of service code and so on. So you need to update them. So you need repeatedly update, optimize, and check your performance of the code. This is the only way that you can fix it, because no one is perfect. We can make a lot of mistakes in code, creating some loop inside the unnecessary loop inside the automation. So we have to always monitor it. And some people ask me, okay, should I enable app insight in my Azure function? Why not? This is the service that helps you. So basically you need to enable that kind of service monitoring and make sure that everything working as it's expected. So let's go for the next question. With Azure Automation Service works well. Which Azure Automation Service works well with IoT hardware? Many IoT hardware compatible with MQTT, IFTTT, and webhook protocols. So it's a
IoT
good question, actually.
yeah, but it also covers many other resources that we can answer. Yeah, go on, Said.
Yeah. So based on my experience, this is my experience, but we always talk to Hamid like, okay, maybe people implement solution with different ways, but this is my experience. So based on my experience, when it comes to the IoT hardware and IoT services, I strongly recommend Azure Functions. And the reason behind that is Azure Functions is already has built-in connection with services, other services that are pretty much close to IoT solutions. For example, Service Hub, Event Grid. So you can basically build a solid environment between your IoT hardware and Azure Functions. And that's why, because yeah, I've built some solutions based on event logic apps, but it wasn't what exactly I wanted to have. So basically Azure Function in this scenario, when it comes to the IoT hardware, from my perspective and my idea and experience, I think Azure Function is the best one.
Perfect.
So
We have one question from Alishon. You have missed.
I may have missed it. Any recommendation on best security protocol when you want to automate? It's completely depends on your solution. So just give you a small example for you. When it comes to the on-premise scenario, when you want to use, for example, Azure Automation connected to your on-premise environment like Azure Arc, using Azure Arc. When you're using that kind of scenario, then you are using Azure Automation connected to Azure Arc agent on your on-premise VM, or let's say server. And that agent works with port 443 or HTTPS, which is only needs the outbound connection to your server. So it's already secure, right? But when it comes to the other type of the security protocols, it really depends, because you need to go through all of the security aspects of your scenario. Maybe you need to limit it, for example, even webhook connection call to a specific IP. So it depends. From the beginning of session, Hamid and I mentioned, it depends what kind of scenario you are going to have and what type of data. For example, if you are going to have automation for confidential data, yes, you have to follow all of the security best practices. However, in some cases, maybe it's not that much necessary.
Absolutely, making sure of using the most secure protocols, and with staying with the edge of the market, edge of the technology with security protocols, it is highly recommended. Also follow the security benchmarks and best practices also from Microsoft, for instance, as Saeid mentioned, you making sure of using TLS SSL with your services in the communications when it goes out of Azure to the over the internet, but at the resource level and subscription, make sure of having the zero trust within your environment, zero trust framework, and making sure of having the proper RBAC within at your resource level.
Exactly.
Going to
And we have one last question, right?
we clicked same time. Yes, yeah.
Okay. Is it possible to configure an automated hard stop when a fault automation exceeds a specific amount of cost to infinitive loops? If you are talking about Azure automation, just talking about that specific service, if you are using Sandbox, Azure Sandbox, then you can follow just failed, because your automation will be failed as soon as it's reached to that level of fair usage. However, for the other type of the automation, just keep it in your mind. When you build a solution, an automation solution, you have to monitor your solution at least for 3 months, deeply monitoring, because you need to identify those bottlenecks to fix it and optimize your solution. But if we can create some kind of alerts or some kind of automated exit for amount of the cost, as Hamid mentioned, you have Azure budget, which helps you to identify high cost on your services. And in the other hand, you can create some kind of error handling inside your code. So when we are talking about error handling inside your code, then you are able to create some specific monitoring for your automation. For example, go call this API, and if it's failed, just return this error to the automation, which is connected to the other service alert, that I can get some information from my automation. This is way that you can handle that kind of issue. It's error handling solution.
Absolutely. I mean, that was really great that you point out that having error handling within your code. It starts from your code and then go on and have the error handling also at each of the step and the resources that you are using. Yeah. Amazing. We are done also with questions. No more questions. Saeid, which we can choose for the best question? Which one you say?
I think Mehdi asked most of important question, but the question that I really loved is related to the IoT hardware, because I think it's a kind of critical question to know if some kind of Azure services can directly work with IoT services. So I think Mehdi is the winner of our today's session.
Yeah, I really love the kind of questions Mehdi asked, but we don't have also that much of questions, and we have another question from Ali Shakur, and maybe we can provide both of them an exam voucher.
Why not? Why not?
Okay. Guys, just reach out to us in LinkedIn page, or if you are in learning rooms, just ping us and we will share an exam voucher with you, a 50% of exam voucher for fundamentals and role-based exams. And get certified, mention us.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. This was the last session of the August, but make sure that you registered for next month sessions as well. We are going to have a lot of great speakers in next month, and enjoy. I said August, right? Sorry, September.
October, actually.
No. I just said this is the last session of August.
It's right.
Last session of September. Sorry. Okay.
Amazing. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone. Hope to see you again and enjoy your weekend.
Have a great weekend.